Hi, I'm Joanne Factor, founder and instructor for Strategic Living Safety and Self Defense Training in the glorious Emerald City, otherwise known as Seattle, Washington. I've been teaching empowerment self defense for over 25 years. Now, it sounds like a long time, but when you're fortunate enough to work at something where you see results and can make such a positive difference, the time just flew by. Now, Empowerment Self Defense is a holistic program that covers the full spectrum of violence and abuse, from verbal put downs to all out physical assault. It is evidence based, and participants learn the important skill sets of interrupting violence by recognizing the red flags that somebody just smacked into your boundaries. Now, fixing those boundaries that just got smacked into, every once in a while using physical fighting moves, and then finally self care to manage the emotional aftermath of any assault. In this video, I'm going to go through this little process here by means of a story. So let's get to it. You're walking down a street you have walked down many, many times because you grew up in the neighborhood. Now, another person is also walking down that same street, maybe 30 feet behind you. Are you wondering, are they following me? Now, this has happened to a number of my students over the years and also to me. This particular story is a blast from my past, 40 years past. I was a graduate student living in my very own first real adult apartment. No more roommates, no more house full of other college students. This was my own apartment. And I was so excited. I was back in Brooklyn after college for grad school, and my parents did live less than a mile away. So I'd go over to their house on a Friday evening for dinner and walk home afterwards. This particular Friday evening was in late July. Still very much light outside in the evening. I was walking down Coney Island Avenue. For those of you familiar with that area of Brooklyn, Coney Island Avenue is a very busy street. It's like a couple of lanes of traffic each direction. Now, on a Friday evening, there's still a lot of car traffic, but never other pedestrians, at least not until that evening, when I noticed a young man maybe 20, 30 or so feet behind me. All the shops are closed. A little voice in my head whispered, "Something's not right." The distance between the two of us was steadily decreasing. So I decided to give him the chance to just walk on by. I stopped in front of a clothing store and pretended to be interested in the window display. Now, I used to be a smoker. At that time, I smoked those Indonesian clove cigarettes, and unlike typical American cigarettes, these burned for a long time, over 10 minutes. I had a lit cigarette in my hand at that time. When the young man gets to where I'm standing, he does not walk on by. He stops. He says to me, "You know, smoking's bad for you." 40 years ago, I had not heard about boundary testing or assault dynamics. But I could sure smell a power play, and this one stunk, even more than those Indonesian cigarettes. This was what we now call a boundary test, where the wannabe perp says or does something borderline inappropriate. They want to see how you respond, if you'll be compliant, if you'll be an easier target. So what he said was, smoking's bad for you. And in this particular example, he's looking to see if I agree with him, and I put the cigarette out. Now, yeah, 40 years ago, yeah, we knew smoking was bad for you. And in that sense, yeah, technically he's correct. But was that the appropriate thing or the correct thing for him to say? No. And that is the first red flag. I trusted my gut feelings that he was not expressing a concern for my health, but that this was indeed a power play, that boundary test. And after recognizing that red flag, the next step is your exit strategy, or different ways of using your voice, your body language, and feet to control the distance to fix that tested boundary. I looked right back at him and said, "Yeah, I heard that nasty rumor too." I did not extinguish my cigarette. He didn't just walk on. Rather, he began just trying to make small talk. I didn't want to chat with him, so I resumed walking. He did too, keeping pace with me, still chattering away and still getting no response from me. At the time, it felt like it went on for minutes, but it was probably less than 30 seconds. I guess he got bored with no response, so he changed his tactic and he propositioned me. He asked for oral sex, and he's trying to sell it to me as such an amazing experience for me. Yeah. So I figured this no reply tactic was not working as well or as quickly as I wanted. Time to move on. As he's trying to convince me to give him oral sex, I'm not only keeping his presence on my radar, I'm scanning the area. Are there other people around? If I jump out into the middle of the street, can I flag down a car? Are there maybe any shops that are open? And serendipity strikes. There is an open corner convenience store across the street. Good for me. I turn to him and say, "You need to be somewhere else." And I cross the street. So I still keep him on my radar as I cross Coney Island Avenue. And he stays on that side of the street. I enter the store. And he keeps walking. And I watch as he walks down Coney Island Avenue. I watch him from the safety of the store until he vanishes from sight. And then I stay in the store and I watch more. And after a few minutes, I leave the store to continue my way home. Am I a little nervous and edgy as I continue home? Yes. And I am watchful for any sign of him. And I never see him again. Okay, so far so good. I recognized red flags, boundary violations. I patched up those boundaries, reinstated them. He's gone. I continued on home. But what if he had not just walked on by? Okay, the first thing I thought at that time, if he were to assault me, was, well, I have this lit cigarette in my hand. I could stick it in his face. Now, over the years, I've had several students who said they did use lit cigarettes as weapons and very effectively. Now, please do not take up smoking to have one handy, as smoking is bad for you and is certain to compromise the quality and length of your life. I quit smoking well over 35 years ago. But that's in terms of physical self-defense, that's as far as it went. I had no plan of what I could do otherwise. No training or classes in self-defense. I didn't even know they existed, although they probably had at that point in time for maybe close to a decade. Now, that didn't mean I couldn't fight back. Indeed, most people who do fight off attackers have had no self-defense training. However, learning some empowerment self-defense skills does give you more confidence in yourself, in your ability to recognize red flags and nip the process in the bud, and actually does give you better odds should you have to fight back physically. Now, what I teach for physical skills is basic strikes to most vulnerable places on the body, and those are the targets, and putting those strikes together in combinations to disable the wannabe perpetrator so you can safely escape. Using stronger parts of your body like the heel of your palm, your elbow, your ulna, that's the bone in your forearm, your knees, and your feet. Targets on the other person include the nose, the eyes, the throat, the solar plexus, the groin, and the knees. Now, I want you right now to pause for a moment and look around your room. Because you don't have to just use parts of your body. You can pick up anything and use that as a weapon. What do you see? Do you have a pen nearby? A cell phone? A coffee mug? If it has points or edges, it can be shoved into soft tissue, like throat or eyes. If it has heft, it can be swung or smashed into vulnerable areas. Now, take a moment or two, pause this video, and check out a few potential weapons. I'll wait. So, there are no rules for fighting in self defense. Your only goal is to safely escape. And to do that, you want to keep on moving and striking the next open target and the next open target and the next one. Keep yourself moving forward and try to keep them moving backwards. Can their balance be compromised? Can you impair their vision? You can do that using the nose and the eyes targets. If they can't see you, they can't follow you. Can you hinder their breathing using the throat or the solar plexus targets? If they're struggling to breathe, they're not going to be running after you. Can you mess up their ability even just to give chase via the groin or the knees as targets? If they can't run, well, they can't run. So, how do you know when to escape? Are they on the ground, curled up in a fetal position? That's a good sign that you can get away. Or are they trying to escape from you? If they are, let them go. Now, often after an assault, the person who is targeted has feelings of isolation and powerlessness. Self-care helps you get back a sense of control over your life. And it helps deal with those waves of emotional trauma. There are numerous approaches and levels to self-care, and today I'm going to talk about one in particular. Breaking down the sense of isolation by finding a person or a group of people you trust and who are supportive and who you can talk with. In my case, I don't think I told anyone at that time. I never thought of making a police report because, well, it's not really a crime to proposition somebody, and I really didn't think that the police would take it very seriously. I might have told a couple of friends, but I don't recall telling anybody because, this was New York in the 1980s, early 1980s, and that was just seemed to be part of living in New York because just about all my friends had kind of creepy, similar experiences. And I certainly did not tell my parents. They're lovely people, but they were chronic worriers. And they would just worry about my living in my own place. And I like my independence, and I did not want to have to listen to them constantly voicing concern. But that was then. This is now. Today, a larger portion of the population recognizes the long term impacts of adverse events on people's lives. Well, that's a mouthful for sure. Another way of putting it, where once the attitude would have been, well, that's just part of being female, deal with it. Now we're seeing an alternative interpretation. That may be part of being a woman today, but we don't like it. We're not going to put up with it, and we will change it. And more resources are available. What I suggest to students today is to actually find another person, talk to them, especially if those feelings of isolation or helplessness are intruding. And today there are numerous hotlines where you can call and talk to a trained professional or a volunteer. Now, you can choose to talk with somebody you already know and believe you can trust. But we do live in a victim-blaming culture. And we want to minimize the chance that our chosen listener will either freak out or try to figure out what did you do wrong and tell you what maybe you should have done. So here's my 3-prong approach to selecting your listener. Number 1, they listen. Duh. What I mean is that they let you speak for a while. Not just for a minute or two, and then interrupt with, wait, did you do, you could have done, you should have done, I would have done. Thank them for their time and move on, find somebody else. It doesn't mean they're a bad person, but it more likely means that they don't have the social skills or emotional bandwidth to be supportive of you. Okay? Now, what you should be hearing after they listen is something more like, that sounds scary, horrible, disturbing. Put your own word in there. Is there a way you'd like me to support you? You don't have to think of something this instant. I'm here for you. Okay. That's a little more useful. Okay, that's the first one. They listen. Second, they believe you. They don't ask you, "Are you sure?" Maybe it was a miscommunication. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Why are you trying to get that nice young man in trouble? Yeah, no, they believe you. If they don't, move on. Now, very often, the assailant, unlike this story, this person was a total stranger, but most people who try to assault women are not strangers, they're people we know. So, if the assailant and you have a shared social group, and what one of the friends you tell is in that group, maybe they are struggling to wrap their brain around what you just told them. So, I mean, that's great, but you're needing support. So, move on, find someone else. So they believe you. Third, it wasn't your fault. Not what you were wearing, how much you had to drink, were you flirting, because nobody ever asks to be assaulted. Period. End of sentence. Now, do you tell the police how much of your family or friends do you tell? How many of your family or friends do you tell, and how much? Do you find a therapist? That's up to you. We're social creatures. And social support is important, and I highly recommend finding somebody that can and will support you. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of safety skills that you can develop. Anyone can develop them. Now, this is just one scenario, one story, and the choices I made decades ago. Now, there's a universe of others. I'll be making a few more videos, so stay tuned. And do check out my website, strategicliving.org, for an empowerment self defense program near you once we get past this great pandemic of 2020, or currently I'm offering classes online. So check them out, stay safe, and live life.